Okay, in today's episode, we are going to be talking about this IMF global elite plan to really replace the dollar, replace gold, and move into this SDR, more digital system. Now, this is really the end game, or one of them, of this currency reset and this great reset that we've discussed here. And today we have Lynette Zang. Now, Lynette and I have a lot of fun on all of our episodes. Combined, we've got over 2 million views discussing what is happening. So we're going to get the latest updates and we're going to be discussing in depth about this secret plan with the IMF and this overall monetary system. Thank you to First Majestic Silver, for being our mining stock sponsor on our channel. So be sure to check out First Majestic Silver. Now, I want to say Lynette and her team have an awesome wealth strategy that they've really implemented in an amazing way. And so right there down below, there's a link and they do a complimentary call where they walk you through what they do in business to help put together a complete wealth strategy system with gold, with silver, and looking at this entire monetary reset. And they have a complimentary call right there down below where you can see the link and pinned to the comment right there down below to schedule your call with Lynette and her team at ITM Trading. Now, I gotta say, you gotta make sure you hit the like button on this video because we're out to help wake up as many people going on in the world. So make sure you hit the like button right there, right there. You got to comment down below Lynette Rules right there down below. Comment down below Lynette Rules. And make sure you check out the link to schedule your call right there down below. And it's good to see you, Lynette.
I'm happy to be here, Jake. I love it. Although I don't think anything really replaces gold, including SDRs. They've tried. They keep trying, but yet they keep buying them. Buying
right
gold too,
or in their mind they're replacing it, right? They're moving, basically, is it right, they're essentially, their goal is to move to an even broader global fiat system. Again, it's kind of just a smoke and mirrors. And so I'd love for you to kind of give us the full picture here on this IMF plan to move towards these SDRs in this digital system.
Well, the whole digital system, the SDR stands for Special Drawing Rights, and it's a currency that the IMF created back in 1969, for those viewers that aren't familiar with it. But it was created in 1969 to take over as the world reserve currency at that time, away from the US dollar. Now, for those that aren't familiar with it, having the title of the world reserve currency means that if you are a government or a corporation, as well, obviously, as an individual, that is going outside of your borders to do anything, you have to use that currency. So the U.S. has held that title for, well, since Bretton Woods in the 40s. And actually at first they tried, well, okay, let me back up here for a second. When we transitioned off of the gold standard in 71, that's why the SDR was created, was to take over. But Henry Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia, created the petrodollar, and so the U.S. retained that status. It's a huge advantage. It is why we are, we're losing it, but why we are the global financial leader. But that also gives us a lot of control over every other country, because they've been forced to go through the U.S. SWIFT system in global transactions. Now, once the SDR becomes the world reserve currency, that would change a lot of things, because unlike the U.S. dollar that's created from debt, the SDR is a button push, and there is no additional debt to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, created. That's why you may hear, well, they have the cleanest balance sheet. Okay. However, it is composed of, well, right now, 6 different currencies, but they can expand those currencies, that currency basket. and they could, if they wanted to, put in every currency on the planet. So that would make it very easy for global trade because you would trade in SDRs, but then because there's a component of your currency in the SDR, it would more easily translate locally. So in this country, you could do a transaction with India or China or wherever, but it would translate immediately into dollars and it would make it much easier. So it is kind of logical that that would take over as the world reserve currency. And you're also talking about digitization and tokenization. Part of the goal is to have all equities, and all titles to property, to real property, also held on these coins. In that way, they can break the coin down. So for example, let's say I have $100,000 in equity in my house, right? And it's now held, it's tokenized, turned into a token, and it's held in SDRs that are broken down to $100,000 $1 increments. And now you go to the mall or you decide you want to buy a car or something like that. And particularly when they can control your credit even more and your ability to buy things or not buy things, then what it appears to me that their plan is, because I'm not part of the IMF, but they have stated in a lot of documents how much easier it would be for you to spend your equity, right? Right now, if you want to spend your equity, you have to go get a home loan, and then they put that in your account, and you can spend it that way. But once everything is in digital form and all titles are held in digital form, then what is most likely to happen, quite honestly, is that without realizing it, people will spend any equity that they own in anything or in everything. And because the SDR is a much broader global currency, because it's a basket of currencies, that means that wealth and money can transfer around the world a lot faster, a lot easier, and you don't really even know who's picking up the equity in your house.
And is the goal of this so that they quote unquote stimulate, so that they get inflation, or what is the goal of this?
The goal is wealth transfer. Okay. And they want you to volunteer it just like we have been through inflation. So it's control, absolutely, because once everything is in digital form and it's intangible, well, what is the new money? It's programmable money, right? They can take it in negative rates. They can timestamp the money. They can direct where you can and cannot spend that money. And that's all at a push of a button with enough distance between the central banks and the individuals. And therefore the individuals lose all control. Just like, we're going through a transformation and transition socially. I mean, it should be pretty obvious to everybody now, right? Socially, economically, and financially. But it really is about wealth transfer because you will own nothing and you will be happy, except that wealth never disappears. It merely shifts location. Does that make sense to you, Jake?
Makes perfect sense.
So at ITM, and part of the strategy, the strategy is to have that wealth shift your way. Because I'm pretty sure if you own nothing and everybody else gets to dictate, that means you're renting everything. I mean, we're even including the clothes on your back. Then guess who gets to dictate how much that is? And you're basically a slave.
So, what does this look like on the other side of this? You said, we're in the middle of this change. You said I'm not in the IMF, but this is what it looks like. What's occurring? So, how does it look on the other side, and how close are we to this digitization in terms of these kind of like Fed wallets or whatnot, or central bank wallets?
Well, what it looks like is for most people, it will not look good because of course now you've got to dance to their drummer if all of your wealth, the way you get paid, the way you transact, the way you even attempt to accumulate wealth. I mean, basically, I don't think you're going to be able to accumulate wealth. They're going to take us back to, in many ways, the dark ages where you just had, a few lords over all of the population and they basically taxed you to death. And we are kind of being in that circumstance right now. And part of the strategy initially, for me, my personal strategy, my intention was to convert, probably a lion's share of the gold on the other side of the reset. So when we went into the new system and the Fed wallets, the digital dollars and things like that, that doesn't mean that we're done yet when they do that because they have to get rid of the debt first. So I want to be really, really, really clear on that because people will think, well, oh, that must be the reset because they came out with something new. No, that'll just be a tool to get them even further. Okay. And I think it's critical that people understand that. But before I saw the digitization of everything, my intention was to convert a lion's share of the gold that I'm holding into income producing assets. And that's still part of the strategy. But then I would convert a chunk of the pure asset protection gold that I have into the new currency. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to convert it as needed because in the digital world, it is easy for them to now attack your principal relatively invisibly, just like inflation attacks the purchasing power value. And we don't realize it. So therefore, we volunteer. Therefore, they can get away with all of this because when they set the system up, they do. That people don't understand inflation and that nominal confusion. But the dollar, so it's 1.00, you have some limitations with that. With the digital currencies, you can have as many numbers after that digit or after that period as you want. So that's how they can attack. That's one way that they can attack your principal almost invisibly without you even realizing it because they can do it in such small increments, as well as going deeply negative to get you to spend. So my plan has shifted and now I'm going to hold back a lot more of the pure asset protection gold because there's different kinds. There's different kinds of gold. There's different kinds of silver. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And that's what determines how you position your wealth and how you build that portfolio. But the asset protection, no, I'll convert it as I need to convert it and not in a big chunk because that will give me a lot more control and it will also preserve my principal a lot better.
Very interesting.
Isn't it?
I love talking to you.
Evil genius. It is. It
is.
The whole system, the way they set this whole thing up, all of their experiments, really genius, evil genius, but it really is interesting.
It's very interesting. And every time I talk to you, it's interesting too, because I always hear something different. I always learn something different. So if you're enjoying this, everyone, please make sure you hit the like button on either side. Send us out into the YouTube universe. Now, I want to address a couple of things. You've said a lot of interesting points, so I'm trying to slowly nail them down. So
okay, sorry.
Everyone it's not sorry. It's you say so much interesting stuff. So one of the things you said is you were describing the detail of you will own nothing and be happy, right? And that's become a popular phrase. Most people have heard of it by now because the World Economic Forum released that video about the Great Reset, and they literally said, you will own nothing and be happy. And it sounds very bizarre. You say, that's weird that you guys are saying that, but it makes no sense. So I don't really even buy how you're going to do that. But you actually kind of went into detail and you were explaining how you said like almost you're spending all your equity. So eventually you don't even own your own spot. And I want you to go into detail a little bit more as you did and explain what they mean when they say you will own nothing and be happy. What does that mean?
Well, okay, number one, you made a very interesting comment, which is that you kind of projected the you will own nothing and be happy, and that happens over here. But I'm pretty sure all of your viewers have seen the commercial, about own the experience. So they've been preparing us for this for a very long time, right? Change your apartment, change the world. Right? Do you own your apartment? No, you don't own your apartment. You're renting the apartment. And what happens every single time you go to renew your lease? The rent goes up. Has it gone down? No. Well, maybe in Manhattan right now. Maybe San Francisco too. Yeah. So there are a few places where the rents are probably going down. But generally speaking, so we really, and the advent of credit cards. Now, they came into being, well, they started with credit in the 20s. They started giving us credit just not against anything. In the 50s, we got the credit cards. So now, I mean, kids are encouraged to get credit cards. I know my grandkids, well, the ones that are in their like early teens, they have these credit cards. So they've been moving us in this direction for a very long time, and it's called nudging. That's actually the formal term for it. And just like you didn't really realize that, because I could tell by your statement, we don't. It's almost invisible. So therefore, what they're saying is you are volunteering your wealth. Okay. So what it looks like on the other side of this is really very much like a medieval setup where you have just the few that own everything and the masses that own nothing. Now, are they happy? I don't think so, because you also have no freedom. And that's really what physical gold and physical silver are. They're freedom because they're real money. And they don't need any government or central banker to say this is money. And it's money because they meet the criteria of good money and they have the greatest functionality of any asset because they are used across the entire global economy, every area. So therefore, you 100% of the time, there are always the broadest base of buyer. Now you tell me what other asset class can say that?
Yeah, people say, well, maybe you should have 5% gold or whatever. I'm way over that for gold and silver. And I wasn't sure at the beginning, if I was going overboard, but it's so nice now because I don't ever plan to sell it. It's so nice to legitimately have something that's totally out of the system. And it feels good considering when you're seeing what's happening. And I want to get into gold a little bit more later, but you said something, we were talking a little bit about the details of you will own nothing and be happy. And you said it's not an event. It's a process that has been underway. And of course, it was very expedited with lockdowns and the number of people not paying their rent and not paying their mortgages. I mean, it's an incredible amount of people that really aren't paying their rent or mortgages right now. But then you said it won't really be complete until they get rid of the debt. And my question is, you said this earlier, but how do they get rid of the debt then? Because that had never crossed my mind.
They hyperinflate it away or hyperdeflate it away. There seems to be this huge thing. Well, if there's deflation, there's not inflation, except that it's just the flip side of the same coin. And it really doesn't matter whether it is an imploding stock, bond, real estate, derivative market or an exploding, monetary, creating all of this money. Both of those things are happening right now. And the way the system, the current debt-based system is designed, it constantly compounds. You never really get rid of that debt. That's why we're at the end of it, and that's why no matter how much more debt seems to be created, they say they can't generate the inflation, except now they're seeing major signs of it. But hey, we're being told that this is just transitory. Don't worry about it. Except that, a family of four could live on $9,500 back in 1971 when we started this. And now you've got people earning $150,000 a year that are getting stimulus checks. And I know people that even are making a lot more than that. I believe somebody told me that Jim Rickard's got a stimulus check. And I'm pretty sure he makes more than $150,000 a year.
One of the things I was going to say to you too that was so interesting is in the little town that I live, I have my favorite little restaurant, and I went in there. I go there all the time, but I've been doing takeout because it's a nice restaurant, but they've been using all plastic silverware and paper. And I'm like, look, if I go to a nice restaurant, I don't want to eat with a plastic fork. And
right.
So they said for a while, hey, we're about to get, all of our dishwashers back and stuff. And they told me a couple weeks, that was maybe 6-8 weeks ago, and they still don't have it. So they know me well. So I asked the manager, I said, just the other day, you guys got my real glass silverware, my glass plates and silverware and everything. And he said, we still don't. And I made a joke. I said, they giving too much stimulus money away or something? And he said, yeah, no one will take our dishwasher job because of stimulus money. So that's why we haven't been able to do it. We've had ads up for 2 months.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem is hiring. And that's all the transition to the UBI. But if you don't have the workers, then you can justify the automation, right? And the robotics and the AI. So it justifies a lot, because now what it looks like is that it's the worker's choice. But again, were they not nudged into that choice? I mean, 3 of those stimulus checks in a year, plus the added unemployment benefits, plus the child care tax credits, and all of these things. I mean, that equated to a family of 4 with $150,000 income getting an additional $14,000. An additional $14,000. So yeah, they're shopping, but there's not really a whole lot of reason. If you are, if you're at the lowest pay level, why in the world would you go to work and give up income?
Yeah, it was shocking to hear that. And so have you followed it all as we're kind of on this subject of how this plays out? Have you followed it all? China, they've released, even in a lot of the mainstream publications, of course, said, hey, China's got this digital yuan they rolled out and the programmable money, and they were testing it. Mm-hmm. Is that basically what's coming everywhere, and they're just running a sample size? Because we do know the IMF has been, Christine Lagarde's in a video saying the center of the IMF will be in China. So, I mean, right. This is, it looks like they're testing it there before it's rolled out. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I think China has been leading the way in many, many areas, and the digital yuan is certainly one of those areas. And they dictate what you can buy with that. And that digital yuan has a life, if you don't use it by this date, it goes away. So they're running, yes, I think China is the forerunner to what is happening globally. They are showing the world how to control their population, absolutely. And I really hate to say this. If anybody really actually thinks we live in a democracy, what's been happening since the pandemic should show you that it's not true. And I think we will become more and more and more like the Chinese. Unless there's some kind of revolution. And we could be leading up, certainly, we could be leading up to a revolution.
Yeah, recently it's been interesting to watch that because, people like you have been talking about this reset, and I've always, I'm open-minded. It seems like it all makes sense. But now we're seeing actual details like China releasing this and it's programmable money and this is how it is implemented and it could be taken away. And now you're seeing it tangibly. It's no longer maybe 9 months ago when people would discuss this, people might comment down below and say, no way, or nice concept, but this is silly. Now we're seeing those details actually play themselves out in real life. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. And it didn't just start 8 months ago. The first breaking below the lower zero bound, which happens to be one of my very favorite pieces from the IMF, came out in 2015, where they were talking about this and how to get rid of the nasty, the paper currencies so that they could take you below zero because they're out of ramp room. So none of this, and of course 96, the cryptocurrencies, the NSA white paper on how to create a digital currency. They've been working on this for a very long time, and by they I mean the central bankers, governments, because they want more control over you, and they want to be able to do lifetime taxing. They want to be able to do wealth taxing. They want to be able to control every single thing that we do. So now you have a small group of elites, which we already have. Clearly, who's benefited the most from all of the stimulus that's been pumped in and continues to be pumped in to the global economy. But so you have a small group that controls everything, and the rest of us, we got to do whatever they say because they control everything.
Yeah,
I'm pretty.
No, it's not. And Christine Lagarde, the European Central Bank tweet from their Twitter account, they tweeted out a clip of Lagarde recently saying, I know people are adverse to negative rates, but we need them for the benefit of the economy. It was like a 45-second clip. And I was like, oh, wow, they're literally now saying it. I guess that's the preemptive programming. Mm-hmm. And so let's talk a little bit about, we see this playing out. Negative rates are coming, the effects of negative rates. You can see also how, recently when Janet Yellen said we need a global tax, mm-hmm. you could see how they need this digital wallets in order to do that, correct? They need this, as you said, the tokenization, the central tokenization of your assets to do this, right?
Yes, exactly. And, the other part is homogenizing the world, right? So where we have America, and we have China, and we have France, and we have Italy. Well, over in Europe, that great experiment trying to pull all of those, 28 countries together, and it didn't work. It's a failed experiment, but they still wanted to homogenize everybody rather than everybody having their own distinct flavor. Okay, we're Americans and we're like this, and somebody else is, India is, and they're like that. And so there's a richness to the culture and the heritage and the immigration when people move from country to country, the richness that they bring. But what suits the central planners is for everybody to be the same and for all of the control to be in one place. Now, keep in mind that the members of the IMF, 189 countries, their central bank chief and their treasury secretaries. So in one place, and all of them, by the way, unelected. I will just say that. Unelected. But how convenient a perch to manage the entire world in a small group of people with everybody being on the same page, taxed the same, no place to escape, and controlled the same way.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. Gregory Manarino, who I've had on my channel, he says that that the central banking system is the true government. It's the true unelected government. And when you factor in and you take a bird's eye view enough on this kind of reset, you can see how that's so. Now, let's talk a little bit about gold. Let's talk a little bit about silver. When you get this whole macro picture, you understand why it's important to have your wealth to leave the banking system, to leave the financial system. Can you give us a little bit of thoughts on that?
Well, it's everything that we've been talking about. It's control. Now, I would be really amazed if any of your viewers actually thought that what they were watching in the stock market, if that was about supply and demand, were just massive amounts of money being printed in. And people get caught up. So if the prices go up, then they go, oh, this is a good thing. Look at, I'm making money, except that the value of the money goes down. And so if they can keep people inside of the system that they easily control, when they collapse the system, and, people think that they would never want to do that. Yeah, no. They do want to do that because they know that they're transitioning. If all of your wealth is held in intangible digital form, when the system collapses, you lose everything. That is why you have to actually have real hard assets, physical gold, physical silver, outside of the system. It's the only thing that's invisible to them. And it's also the only undervalued assets that are out there. Not when you're seeing Apple at 30 times earnings and IPOs that come out and have no earnings, but that market valuation is $26 billion. Are you kidding me? So at some point, logic comes back into play. And when that happens, you darn well better have some physical gold and silver, as well as food, water, security, the barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. You need to have these things so that you are as independent as possible, or you have to dance to their drummer. And their drummer, their contracts, what they have in mind for you could be very different than what you have in mind for you.
Now, some people say, this isn't going to happen, and this is doomsday, or it's conspiracy. But at this point, it kind of seems blatantly obvious that we're moving in this type of direction. I mean, you've got China doing their central bank digital currency, all the mainstream financial organizations covering it, Lagarde saying negative rates are coming. It seems like the writing is on the wall. What is your thoughts to someone that says it's too negative, or I don't want to hear about it, or it won't happen? What's your thoughts to that?
Well, that brings up my very favorite question, which is, how many times can you be lied to when you do not know the truth? And then my favorite statement: ignorance does not make you immune. It simply leaves you vulnerable.
That's a good quote.
Yeah. So I think I made that one up. I've used it a very long time. So I don't know if I heard it somewhere or I made it up, but it's simply true. And so for those people that say, oh, this could never happen, well, I can tell you this: whether it happens, whether it doesn't happen, a truly diversified portfolio actually has some tangible wealth in there that is easily movable. I mean, certainly this house is a tangible asset, but I cannot put it on my back and move it. Whereas with an ounce of gold or an ounce of silver or a collectible coin that's worth more than an ounce, I can put that in my pocket and I can take it anywhere that I want to take it. So I would say that even if you're a naysayer, booty hooty Rudy Manooty, you own gold and silver. I mean, what's wrong with that?
You're right. I mean, it to me, it's just that I want my wealth to not be sitting on a digit of a screen if they're printing that many. I mean, it's as simple as that to me.
Exactly, because then they're determining how much of that wealth that you get to keep for this moment in time. But every time a central banker comes out and says, we need inflation, what they're telling you is that the currency, the fiat currency, the government currency is overvalued and they're taking it down. And if everything you own can only be converted into that currency, well, then let the stock market go to 10 trillion. Because the last time I checked, 10 trillion times zero was still zero.
So what's your expectations here? We're in, what is it? It's April 29th, the time I'm making this. We've had now an interesting year with regards to talks about global taxes and then, capital gains increase, many iterations of stimulus and infrastructure, and an incredible amount of people that they can't pay their rent. They lost their jobs. The company went under. The company's not making money. They're not paying their mortgage. And it's a peculiar place. So what's your estimation on where we're at and what you're expecting here this year?
Well, we've already started the movement toward MMT, modern money theory, where they just create. We've also already started the transition to UBI, universal basic income. And I think as this progresses, because when you talk about the mortgages and you talk about the rents, what also need to be discussed is that those people that own those assets, and especially if you're a mom and pop, a lot of those people have been forced to liquidate their assets because they're not getting the rent in, but they still have to pay the insurance. They still have to pay the taxes. They still have to maintain the property. And so we're watching a lot of consolidation like we do during every crisis. It's a massive amount of consolidation. But even more than that, in the larger corporations that are not collecting as many rents, et cetera, well, those rents have been pledged as collateral for Wall Street products. So it's actually this whole kind of domino effect. It's not just they're not paying their mortgage and they're not paying their rent. There are huge consequences to both of those pieces. And we are so precarious. I should have set up the Jenga set because we are in such a precarious position. But I definitely think we will see, it's still early in the year, we could very well see a much more formal UBI program because they're not going to cut it out once they start these things. I mean, Bank of Canada has started to, quote unquote, taper. So they're buying a little less of the government bonds, right? We tried to taper. We tried to raise interest rates. Right? It doesn't work. Once you get Wall Street addicted to this free, cheap money, that's not going to end. So they're going to have to figure out how to, well, that's the thing. I could be totally dead wrong on this, right? Except that they postponed the IBOR's interbank offer rate that became obvious, it got leaked actually, that this was a stated interest rate. There are 640 or more trillion dollars worth of contracts written against this rate that has to go away. They postponed it going away because they couldn't make that transition. They postponed it until 2023. We also have the Federal Reserve saying that they are most likely going to come out with a digital dollar in 2023. So we have this little window, I think, that we can continue to get ourselves into a position to be as independent and self-sufficient inside of a community. I'm not saying you have to do it all alone, but outside of the current system that we're in, we have this little bit of a window as they continue to make this transition. What could derail their plans could be a complete loss of confidence in the government bonds. That's why interest rates and paying attention to what's happening with interest rates are so critically important, because the fact that the 10-year bond, which is the foundation of the global financial system, has been rising could be troublesome. They're going to have to keep that tamped down, because once it reaches a certain level, it could be 2.5%, it could be 3%. I'm not really sure what that level is going to be, but there are a whole lot of contracts and derivative bets that are just speculative bets that can start to blow up, and the central banks could lose control. And they very well could be with all the inflation that's coming in now. Don't worry about that. Don't look at the man behind the screen. Everything's just fine. This is transitory. Well, maybe it's not so transitory. Maybe he's not as calm about it as he appears, because their job is to keep everybody calm and marching in the direction that they want you to march in. But don't march in that direction, because they're marching you off a cliff. You got to have physical gold and silver outside, and you got to have your food, your water, your energy, your security, your community, and your shelter. Got to have all of that.
So if you want to set up your wealth strategy call with Lynette's team at ITM Trading, the link to that is right there down below in the description and pinned to the comments right there down below for you to go ahead and check that out. So one of the things that I wonder is, how does it play out with all of these people that haven't been paying their rent and mortgage? Because when you think of just the people that haven't been paying their rent too, that means somebody else owns the house. So maybe they haven't been able to pay it, right? And
exactly.
So I wonder, does it end up in some type of, you said during all crises, there's always a further centralization of power, whether it's in the world of commerce or what have you. And I wonder if it moves into, if you're 16 months behind, and they moved it to now like October 2021, by then people might be 18 months behind on their rent. There's no way they're ever going to catch back up on their mortgage. And at that point, I wonder, do they become convertible into leases owned by the Fed? I wonder, have you thought through at all? I just wonder, how does that work out?
Well, I don't know that the Fed actually wants to become a landlord, but what it does do is burst the housing bubble, right? Look at the real estate bubble that's been created in there. Oh, well, we need more supply. There's not enough supply. Well, there could be a lot of supply coming on the road. Now, they may be counting on having the courts kind of moderate the speed that it comes out. But I don't really see the central banks wanting to own everything. I see them wanting to manage everything. And I see that the group that has been selected to survive this, that they're too big to fail or too important to fail. You and I, we're little, right? We are too big to fail to our families, but not to the Federal Reserve, not to the central banks or governments. So, but there are certainly groups like, Blackstone, that is, they would be the beneficiaries of that. They would be managing that. And we've seen them bring Blackstone in as one entity, but there are other entities that are that large as well to manage everything for them because they've got the experience. And that particular group really did quite well during the last collapse with real estate.
So we painted a pretty complete macro picture. And I want to ask you, what do you think are the most important philosophies to aid someone listening to this right now? Because when I look at this right now, right, there's going to be the uber top global elite percentage. And then there's going to be, a percentage of a few of us that have been able to effectively leave the system in many respects, have some self-sufficiency financially, but also in these other areas that you've discussed. And then there's a level below that is the overwhelming percentage of people that are 100% reliant on the system in every capacity. And I want to ask you, for someone listening to this right now, what are the important philosophies and mindsets and tools to ensure your freedom?
Well, I mean, that is my mantra: food, water, energy security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. And the way that I've done it, and especially if you don't have the means, right? You look at where are you most vulnerable? Because after all, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So you sit there and you say to yourself, okay, where am I the most vulnerable? And then you do a little something in that area. Like for me, when I first bought this property in 2010, there was a back door that if somebody really wanted to get in, boom, they would just kick it open. It was, it's an older house and it was easy to do. So the first thing that I did was put a security door in there. Now they can't kick it in, right? Now, is that all the security that I've done? No, but that was where I felt most vulnerable. So I just got her done. Then I could stand back and say, okay, where am I the most vulnerable? And that's what we need to be doing. We need to look. We had a taste a year ago, right? What were your circumstances then? What did you say, oh, I wish I had? Is it food? Is it water? What is it? We got a little teeny taste.
I wanted a spaceship then. That's what I wanted back when.
Well, yeah. Well, that's kind of like the bug out house, right?
Yeah, right.
That was my vulnerable place. That's what I realized, especially when the riots were happening. And I went, So I got that handled. And that's kind of a spaceship because it's really remote. You're not getting there. And I'm more comfortable, though we are going to try and do something up there. We're not going to tell anybody where it is, but we are going to try and do something up there.
Yeah, if you want to see that, everyone listening, Lynette just got an amazing bug out house somewhere on planet Earth. And we were going to do some videos there in person. And so if you want to see that and you want us to talk more in depth about that subject, give us a comment down below on that and let us know.
Yeah. So, but that's, really that's what you have to do. And there are all different levels that you can do it at. And even with the metals, with gold and silver, a lot of people go, well, I can't afford that. Well, at ITM, the minimum is $1,000. Now that may not be affordable for everybody. So if you can't afford that, just keep in mind that gold and silver in any form is monetary at its base. So to go to, I think a great place to go, quite honestly, are to some antique malls where you find out who likes to deal in silver. And they probably, my guess is that they're going to have a lot of stuff that's bent and broken and dinged and that they can't really put out and sell. But they would sell it to you by weight. So you go in with $20, $100, whatever you have, whatever you can do. And you can start to accumulate physical gold and silver in that way. There's always a way to do it. You just have to think about it for a minute and be creative.
Absolutely. So, for everyone listening, let us know a little bit about wealth strategy, everything you've been doing for years. I mean, you've been studying this subject for a long time, and so in a bittersweet way, I have to imagine it's vindicating in some sense, because you were talking about this reset and all these things for so long before there were these signs that we're now seeing
Right.
in the mainstream. And you've been discussing setting up your wealth strategy for so many years.
Mhm.
And you become one of the global experts on this subject. And so for those interested, and they want to set up the complimentary call, give us an idea of your mission and your life's work with all of this, and how this wealth strategy plays itself out.
hmm Well, it's pretty, as you know, I have been groomed for this moment in time. And I've really been in this industry on some level and learning since I was 10 years old, so 1964. And when I became a stockbroker in 1986, in 1987, I started studying currencies. Had I not done that, I would not know anything, because this is not information they really want you to understand. But when you do understand it, there are really easy to see patterns that tell you where we are in a currency's life cycle, because everything has a life cycle. I don't care what it is. And certainly I'm at a different point in my life than my 6-year-old granddaughter is, right? So currencies are no different. The strategy that I developed for myself, even before I went to ITM in 2002, was based upon the repeatable patterns that I saw as I looked at and studied currencies. And subsequently, I saw it. I went, wow, currencies have a life cycle. Who thinks about that? But the patterns, that's what I talk about a lot on my channel, are patterns, because once you learn what they look like, then it's much easier to recognize them. Just like we were talking earlier, and I can't quite remember what it was, but it was something, about us owning nothing and being happy, and how they, that's something in the future. Well, no. That's part of the pattern. That's part of the setup. So the strategy is based upon repeatable patterns. I can't guarantee tomorrow, but I kind of think if something's happened the same way over 4,800 times, and we're doing the same thing, the most likely outcome is we're going to get the same results. And that makes it actually pretty easy to understand and see these repeatable patterns. Now, at ITM, we have a huge team, and we've been together for a really long time. So you take my personal experience and commingle it with everybody else's, their personal experience, and we meet regularly and we talk about all of these things. And so the strategy is even more powerful because it draws on everybody's long-term experience. And that's what we do at ITM. That's really what we like to do, and it's customized, because what you have to work with, what your goals are, where you are in your life, is going to be different than me. So it's basically the same, just kind of tweaked. And it is definitely based on currency life cycles.
It's interesting when you said that about currency life cycles and the pattern of that. It made me think that while the world is different today, technology, all these things, there were always these Klaus Schwab characters and this "you will own nothing and be happy." It's just recycled in a different way, different time, different infrastructure, different world. But as currency lifestyles has failed, you've had the pendulum swing back towards a centralized owning and this serfdom world. And then it swings back towards more free market. Then it goes back that way. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Very
That's
interesting.
Exactly what I'm saying. And you can see it. And everybody, that's one of the key things to hear for, or to listen for, is when they say this time is different. Because it's never different. Yes, we've got advancement in technology, and that's great. But that also gives governments and central bankers a lot more control over the individuals, doesn't it? Especially if we just blindly allow them to do that. Is it more convenient? Look at how much is sold on convenience, right? But how convenient is your freedom? It may not be that convenient, but it's worth it. You really want somebody dictating every single thing that you do? Do you really want to not? And some people do. Some people are, more comfortable having somebody tell them when to get up, when to eat, when to go to the bathroom, what they should do. And, that maybe that's repeat offenders that go to jail where everything is absolutely regulated, because that's really where we're headed. We're headed into a place, just look at China. We are headed into a place where if you are not positioned to be independent, every single thing you do will be regulated. That's not okay with me. And especially, look, I'm 66. I'm toward the end of my life cycle. But I have my grandchildren that I really love dearly, and even the offspring they'll give me down the road. For me, this is more important. That's why I love being on your channel too, Jake, because it enables me to reach a younger audience, because that's really where the hope is. It's in the younger audience. Wake up, see the writing on the wall. It may be convenient, but it is not in your best interest, unless that's really how you want to live your life, by somebody else dictating everything. And then if you make a choice that they don't like, they push a button and you're cut off. You lose your credit. You can't access your account. You can't buy anything. Yeah, you got to do what they want, don't you?
Powerful. And you're right. I mean, that's what it comes down to. That's why we make these videos. That's why we make this content. It'd be easier to just make a very clickbait video on how to get rich in tech stocks. And maybe there's a place for that. But with this channel, I've made it my mission as much as possible to have these long, deep conversations that, maybe our people would rather not publish on their own. And we've become a place for that, to prepare as many people as possible to ensure their own freedom. Now, if you want to see that episode of Lynette and I at her secret hideout and diving more deeply into this subject, give us a comment right there down below. It's an absolutely fascinating conversation. Now, I was thinking, Lynette, you said that this Klaus Schwab character in the World Economic Forum, they said you'll own nothing and be happy. And I was thinking the reverse of that is that you will own your freedom and be happy. So if you want to own your freedom and be happy, be sure to sign up for a complimentary call to build your personal wealth strategy with Lynette and team right there down below in the description and pinned to the comments right there down below. I want to encourage everyone to hit the like button on this video to send it out to more people. I know sometimes you're like, I don't want to hit the like button, but when you do on important subjects like this, it does send the video out to more people in the YouTube universe. Comment down below, Lynette rules, right there down below in the comments. Want to thank our sponsor, First Majestic Silver, and I want to pass it over to you, Lynette, for some final words.
Well, just start. If you haven't started yet, start. Don't wait any longer. What are you waiting for? I had somebody ask me the other day, well, can you just tell me a signal of when they're going to bail in the banks? It's like, we are getting signals all over the place. Believe them and get it done. However much you can get done, get it done. Gold and silver are important. Food, water, energy security. Community is so important. That's why I do these, is to expand that community. And that's really what I can say is stop waiting. Don't procrastinate. It is not in your best interest. Don't believe the garbage that they're showing you on mainstream media, because I don't care. A trillion times zero is still zero. And central bankers are bent on destroying the last little vestiges in the currency so they can shift it into one that gives them a whole lot more control. Is that okay with you? Keep doing what you're doing. If it's not okay with you, do something different.
Powerful last words. So for everyone, please share this video on Twitter, Facebook, your blog, send it out on email to a friend, text it to a friend, watch it with someone. You guys can work on putting together your own strategies. You can watch this back through for the most important parts that really spoke to you. So thank you for watching this video. I want to thank you, Lynette, for coming on here. It's always very, very fun to speak with you.
Absolutely. I love coming on your channel, Jake. And I
Awesome.
look forward to taking you up to my bug out house.
I know. I can't wait. I'm excited about it.